Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habati fillah. Continuing on in our study of Qawaid al-Arba, the four principles of SHIRK. We were in the introduction of the treatise by Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala, and we were mentioning that the Sheikh was talking about when he supplicated, in his supplication was a supplication for guidance. And the Sheikh references three types of guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives his creatures. First is the general guidance for all the creation to distinguish what is good and beneficial from harm. So this is the guidance, this is general guidance that distinguishes that everyone has this intuition of what is good or what is good versus that which is harmful. And even animals have this inclination. And along with that, that is a type of guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inclines us towards that, towards the good, to distinguish what is good and beneficial. The second type of guidance is the guidance of clarity and evidence-based, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish his servants without giving them evidence to determine good from evil and faith from disbelief. So this is the type of guidance which is based upon dalil, which is based upon evidence and clarity. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't hold you responsible for those things that you have not learned. So if you have not learned about something, Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is not going to punish you and hold you accountable, because he is al-adil, as we mentioned in our last sitting. And the third type of guidance involves a person being successful by accepting guidance, and this is the result of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. And as we mentioned before, that this guidance, this is the guidance of tawfiq, meaning, for example, if you give dawah to someone, or let's look at an example, look at the dawah example. If you give dawah to someone, this is dawah to irshad. You have shown them some ayat, you've shown them signs in the creation. You say Allah exists, he's the only one worthy of worship, and he has divine names and attributes. Maybe you're talking to someone who's a Christian or a Buddhist or whatever, and you're giving them, you show them the path to the best of your ability. You give them dawah. That is the guidance, or the hidayah to irshad. This is the guidance in which you are showing them the way. The second type of guidance that we mentioned prior, and it goes with the third type that the Imam is mentioning, that this is the guidance of hidayah to tawfiq. Hidayah to tawfiq, ahabati fillah, this refers to the guidance that someone accepts that dawah. So the first example, you're giving dawah, you're showing them the way, and that's a type of guidance. You're trying to guide them. The second type of guidance is if that dawah is successful, and that is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah gave them tawfiq to accept guidance. And I recall when I was searching, I was soul searching. I used to be a musician or a vocalist. And I had a song called Soul Searching. And I used to read many books. I was reading the Bible. I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindus use this book. And I was reading all sorts of books because I was looking for another level of spirituality. Okay. And I was in my music too, and into the music. And so I had a song I wrote. It was called Soul Searching. And I was on that path. But what I found in the guidance in reading the translation of the Quran, and that's another story on how I got the Quran and all the things around it. But the fact that I eventually embraced Islam after, reading the translation of the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, allowed for it to be to impact me. And so the fact that I accepted Islam, that is the hidayah to tawfiq. That is the guidance of tawfiq. That success only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can show the way, but that guidance, that the fact that I embraced Islam, that was only through the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I could have rejected all of those different signs, reading the translation, the autobiography of Malcolm X, my own life transitions and things I was looking into, being in the university and this and that and the other, and searching history of Africa, history of Islam in India, and all these subjects I used to study. They all had an impact, but the only thing that made my heart really accept Islam is the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hidayah to tawfiq. Okay, so that's what the Imam is talking about here. Then I believe it's Sheikh Abdul Razak, he says, if Allah protects you in this life, He makes it easy for you to gain correct knowledge taken from the Quran and Sunnah, and graces you with righteous actions by practicing that knowledge. If He protects you in the hereafter, then He has kept you away from the hellfire. So listen, because this goes back to the dua in the beginning of the treatise. So I advise you, if you have a translation of this treatise, which you can download on the internet, do try to follow with it, because we're giving you the explanation. So we're not always going back to the origin of the treatise, but instead we are focusing on explaining the treatise. And we've already read the metan from the English. So again, listen to what the Sheikh said. He said, if Allah protects you in this life, He makes it easy for you to gain correct knowledge taken from the Quran and Sunnah. So one of the signs and one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for you is that, and the way that you attain real good in this life is gaining Islamic knowledge. Knowledge of Kitabillah wa Sunnatu Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is azim. This is the greatest thing that you can have, the greatest type of guidance that can be at your disposal is ilm al-nafi', beneficial knowledge. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in this regard, قال من يرد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. Whenever Allah wants good for a person, He gives him fiqh fi din, understanding of the religion. Fiqh fi din habati fillah is not just memorizing. Some people are very good at memorizing, walhamdulillah, and some people are very good at and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the fahm, given them the fiqh, the understanding of the nusus. So some people, they don't memorize very much, but they have fiqh. And some people, they're blessed with wisdom, and that's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are some scholars, and I won't mention names in Yemen, but Sheikh Muqbil, rahmatullahi alayhi, when he left his wasiyah, like his will, that he mentioned about many of the different scholars in Yemen and their excellence, okay? And of course, his Khalifa, if you will, in the Dar al-Hadith was Sheikh Yahya al-Hajuri, okay? And then he mentioned many other mashayikh, and he talked about their fada'il. This sheikh, is great in ilm. This one I refer even to masail and fiqh. This one is very good. He has wisdom, and he may not be the highest in knowledge, but he has a lot of wisdom, like an elder. He just is, he's steeped in ilm and steeped in wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. And this is exactly the case of one particular mashayikh, one particular sheikh I can think of in Yemen, who Sheikh Muqbil mentioned about him, and he fits that criterion. So knowledge is at different levels. There's different aspects to it. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man yaradallahu bi khairin yafaqahu fi din." Whenever Allah wants good for a person, He gives him fiqh fi din. So that fiqh fi din means they know where to put and how to practice things. So some people may be good, versed in the halal and haram, almost like a computer. But then there are those who have fiqh fi din. And this is what you find a lot with the ulama, especially the ulama rabbaniyun, those major scholars. There are some scholars that are less than them, that they have understanding and they have a lot to offer us. We can only benefit. But those major scholars that are blessed, and those who are just blessed with fiqh fi deen, they can look at things and apply those nusus. They can look at things and look at the issues, and they have an understanding, and they can deduce, they can infer, they can, really get a good tasawwur of masail. They really can get a good picture of how to apply the ilm. Because there's a difference between having book knowledge and those who Allah has favored with wisdom on how to apply that book knowledge. So I think that was hopefully clear for us to understand. And so this is the fiqh fi deen. That's the real fiqh fi deen. And then he mentions, and if he protects you in the hereafter, then he has kept you away from the hellfire. So if we say, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, O our Lord, give us good in this life as well as the next. Well, good in this life, part of that good in this life is ilm nafi, is the beneficial Islamic knowledge based on the book and the sunnah and the understanding of the salaf of this ummah. That is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is ilm nafiya, and that is good in this life. The other good is the good in the hereafter, and that's the natija. That's getting to Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all with Jannah to Firdaus. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Understanding Islam, beneficial knowledge, is a sign that Allah loves his servant and wants good for him or her. This is because proper sound knowledge assists a person in doing good deeds correctly and is a source of wisdom. In contrast, meaning the opposite, ignorance leads to stagnancy in practice and a lack of understanding of religious verdicts. So a person who's ignorant, obviously they don't have fiqh fi deen. And that means they have a lack of understanding in the literal fiqh, the fiqh of the masail, and they have a lack of understanding even in their practices and their creed. If you're totally ignorant, then, think about this. Think about how many Muslims that you know personally that have never, ever sat and doing what you're doing now and sat in one lecture or dars in Aqidah. How many Muslims? There's so many Muslims who don't know. They're just Muslim. They know something. She's a sister. She knows something about hijab. Her mother wore hijab. She has good manners and she's this. She goes to the masjid. She likes to be engaged in activities and stuff, but she has never, and she likes lectures about Iman and things that fill her heart up with good, but she has never studied a single lesson in Aqidah. Maybe she's had a little this, little that, but there are many Muslims who have never sat. I'm talking about sitting. I'm not saying that they may not have had a basic class or the pillars of Iman or something, but we're talking about that have really done any little bit of talab al-ilm. So this is a very serious thing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all with tawfiq. Ameen. And so this is why the Salaf, the pious predecessors, they used to say, talab al-ilm, talab al-jannah. Seeking knowledge is seeking paradise. So because of the ikhlas it takes, if you're really seeking knowledge, it takes sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It takes the patience, sabr ala adafi, the difficulty in traversing the path of knowledge. It's not easy. It's not easy just from the perspective of sitting. The situation we're in now, this coronavirus thing, right now I'm very isolated. I'm in an isolated place by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which helps to keep me protected from having to, I have to go in the city sometimes and so on and so forth. So it's given me a chance to listen more because I'm doing a lot of construction. I'm building a house more or less and doing all kind of activities. And so I'm listening to a lot of lectures. So I've been listening to just some lecture in Usul al-Fiqh, catching up, listening to Aqidah to kind of prepare for this dars, Qawaid al-Arba, from one of our mashayikh in Sheher, in Hadramaut, also listening to different other lectures. So this gives a chance, this time gives a chance for me to study, whereas normally I might not listen as much, except for when I'm commuting. So try to use your time wisely. That will help you gain fiqh fi din, and that is a part of the path of seeking knowledge. But as the Salaf used to say, that al-ilm يحتاج العلم لم يأتي براحة الجسد. And Sheikh Muqbil used to say this, rahmatullahi alayhi, as well, but it comes from a statement of the Salaf, that which means that knowledge does not come from being comfortable in one's body, meaning that you can't just lay down and sleep and you're going to memorize the Quran. You know, it takes tab. You know, those people who should be commended on one level, at least those people who have memorized the Quran, whether they were little or whether they were older, because they sat. It did not happen like this. It took hours and hours and months and whatever, and some people years. Okay, that's a lot of tab to sit. You know, if you sat in halaqat al-Quran and you sit in the masjid for hours or a couple hours and going through and make a muraja, that takes some juhud. Likewise, this is the path of ilm in general. Talib al-ilm, because that's memorized and that's going, maybe you have to go on a path of knowledge. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man sallaka tariqan yaltalmasuhu bihi ilman, sahala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila-jannah." Whoever traverses the path of knowledge, Allah will make easy for him the path to paradise. So it shows us how important it is to have sincerity on that path and be patient and strive. So if Allah protects you in this life, then you are protected from trials and excessive tribulations and involving yourselves in things that do not concern you. It also means you receive the blessings of guidance until you die. So that's a ni'mah min ni'amillah. A person can only have blessings wherever he is if he is sitting with good people and surrounded by the righteous. So it's very important, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Amari ala dina khalilihi, that a person is on the religion of their companions, meaning that those people you mix with, you're going to be like them. They're going to be influenced by them. So this is why you want to surround yourself with good companions. People who remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help you come closer to Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. Sheikh Abdul Razak mentions that Ibn al-Qayyim said, a person can only be blessed wherever he is if wherever he goes, he leaves benefit with the people around him. Have a ni'mah. So that dua that was in the beginning of the treatise when the Sheikh mentioned, supplicating for the listener or for the reader, and he said, about the true happiness. So true happiness, or a fact that someone is blessed, is that they leave behind good wherever they go. They leave behind good wherever they go. So when they mix with the people, that they leave something good, not a bad taste, not leaving the people sad and angry and from backbiting and just things that, cause the chest to be smaller, but rather they leave them with a faida, maybe something beneficial, knowledge-based. And that is a sign of someone having barakah in what they do, being blessed. True happiness comes from possessing the three characteristics mentioned by the Sheikh, which are thankfulness, patience, and forgiveness. Everyone is in search of happiness. We know this. We're in search of happiness as individuals, and everyone around us generally wants to be happy. Everyone is in search of happiness. Some people search for happiness by sinning and wickedness, some by indulging in worldly issues, and some by doing good deeds. So some people, they actually find the happiness, and there's no doubt, and you can, I'm sure, testify to this, that when you are doing good deeds and your iman is high and you're doing some good things, you gave some charity, you feel good about that. And when you are doing sin, you feel bad and sometimes depressed Oh, I can't shake this sin. I'm in the same sin. I've been doing such and such for years and years. And you feel your chest feels tight and you feel depressed. You don't want to see people because you feel like you have sin written on your head or kufr written on your head. And this is a sign that in and of itself is a sign of iman. It's a sign that you have some iman because you feel shame and you feel sad. But if you don't feel anything and you're doing sins in ma'asi, you don't feel anything, that's a sign of a very hard and difficult heart, which is so harmful. So very important to always pay attention to your heart and watch, always check your heart. Always check your heart. And always advice first and foremost to myself, then you search for happiness in ta'atillah, in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Strive to gain that happiness by being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person who worships Allah alone and is thankful for Allah's favors of guidance, sustenance, family, etc., is truly successful. Okay, so that means the person on Tawheed and is thankful for the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them and the favors and the sustenance, and they look to the ni'am in their life, that this person is a successful person. They're a person who has gratefulness. The way a person shows gratefulness to Allah is by doing righteous deeds with the intent of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think what we're going to do, because I have something I need to take care of right now, I think we'll stop there and we will continue. I will come back in 20 minutes and then it'll be another 20-minute dars because we didn't get very far and I do need to attend to something. We ask Allah the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.